It's time. Another season and another episode of Got Time with Christopher John, your scholar and gentleman in a hoodie. And before we get into it, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. To start off our time, I wish to illuminate an ancestor, an archivist and collector of everything Black, Carol Mundy. Her greatest legacy is the Carol Mundy Collection, with more than 5,000 historic items dating back to the 18th century. The Carol Mundy Collection tells the story of the African American experience through books, pamphlets, newspapers, posters, photographs, and other rare artifacts. She was a passionate collector, researcher, and educator who considered collecting and preserving African American history her life's work. A good portion of the collection was acquired by the University of Central Florida's Special Collections and University Archives. Much respect to Carol Mundy. Now, there are names that echo through history, and then there are names that become a calling. Sojourner is one of those names. When Sojourner Tru chose her name in 1843, she was making a declaration. Born enslaved as Isabella Bumfrey, she renamed herself to reflect her purpose of speaking truth to power. Now, nearly 2 centuries later, another Sojourner invites us on a different kind of journey. Our guest uses art to travel through time. Her artistry challenges us to reconsider the relationship between public history and Afrofuturism. Too often, history is viewed as something behind us, while Afrofuturism is imagined as something ahead of us. But what if they are inseparable? What if the archives themselves contain the blueprints for worlds we have yet to build? What if remembering is one of the most radical acts of imagining? Afrofuturism is not an escape from history. It's reimagining it. It insists that Black people are not only descendants of extraordinary resilience, but also architects of extraordinary futures. And before we can envision where we are going, we must understand the stories that have carried us here. This emerging visual artist, curator, and historian whose praxis weaves together Black archives and Black stories, her artistry pursuits are driven by deep research into the archives of Black history, excavating, reimagining, and giving new form to our legacies. Please welcome and introducing Trudy Gaba, also known as Sojourner Tru.
Oh. Ooh, I feel like I just heard a sermon.
Let the church say amen.
My daddy was a pulpit preacher, so like you just, that took me somewhere. Oh, what an introduction.
Well, I have to give you a proper introduction because your work is so brilliant, and it's just been a pleasure. You've been a divine godsend since we worked together for a little bit, and whatnot. But we've been able to stay connected. But let's get into this conversation. Can you share a little bit about, your artistic identity is tied to Sojourner Tru. Yeah. So, exactly, what is the connection to that iconic historical figure from your perspective, in your eyes?
I consider myself someone with multiple identities, right? I'm a curator, I'm a historian, I'm a researcher. And I think when I coalesce all of those things into how I see myself in my praxis, I think of myself as a time walker. And when I think of time walking, I think of a sojourn. And knowing history, knowing Black history, Sojourner, truth, became this kind of archetypal figure that I saw myself embodying, and wanting to carry that kind of spirit of Black liberation and abolition through my work, and how I try to embody the same principles, the same values of getting our people free.
And we're still on that journey, right?
Yeah.
That journey of freedom and to get us free. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to go back a little bit further. You know, so you're born in Atlanta, Georgia. Is that correct? Yeah. ATL, represent, stand up. Hey.
Georgia Peach.
I heard that. Yeah. Georgia Peach. And so, but you also have, beyond that, you have these Southern roots dealing with like Alabama. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think that resonates in a lot of the work that you're doing.
Learning of who I come from, who were my ancestors, wanting to understand my family tree. It meant understanding Black migration, of understanding movement. And when I think about how my origin story started in Atlanta, but when I think about all the ancestors before me, we're across the country, we're across the globe. But I come from a family of ministers on both sides of my family. And so I wanted to know more about how I got my last name on my father's side, but also my mother is an Anderson and what it meant to be an Anderson. And that took me to Birmingham. My grandfather was born in Birmingham. His mother was born in Birmingham. So we have a family that was born in Alabama, grew and established roots here in this area through civil rights.
When you say established roots, you talking about in Ohio, or are you referring to?
In Birmingham.
In Birmingham.
Established
yes.
roots
in
and
Birmingham.
stayed there for, that takes us back to the early 1800s. We have a huge legacy there. My grandfather was a minister and had ties to the Birmingham 16th Street Church. I think everyone who understands Black history knows of the bombing of the 4 girls that were killed due to white violence. But it was a discovery for me of learning that a lot of my passions and interests are not my own, you know, that I am carrying on this legacy, whether I knew it or not. So many of the values that I've come to possess and the things I choose to carry and center were established well before I was born. And I just see it as my legacy to remember my grandfather's name or remember my grandmother's name. She was also she was a microscopist at Princeton.
So what is a microscopist?
So she worked in the science department. She was one of the first Black professionals hired at Princeton.
Wow.
So I have a picture of her looking under a microscope. So she worked in labs. And she wrote a book on Benjamin Banneker. And I have all of these archives. I have the book safely kept in my archives that I pull out every once in a while. And I was thinking of actually like posthumously publishing it just so people could learn a bit more about Benjamin Banneker and my grandmother.
Absolutely. Now, is this the same grandmother we were talking earlier that received a letter from Langston Hughes?
So that's my great grandmother. Yes.
Oh, that's your great grandmother.
Yes.
Okay.
But all Birmingham. Yes. Both my grandparents met in Birmingham. They both had family roots in Birmingham.
Well, you definitely you come from a lineage of scholars and just brilliance and excellence. So it's no wonder that brilliance and excellence comes out in everything that you're doing. So I want to talk. We were talking about your great grandmother.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure how many people can talk about that they're have a family member that received a letter from Langston Hughes. So can you share a little bit about that story?
So she was a candy maker after she found herself widowed. Her husband was a a dentist in the area, and I think he was a pretty well-known dentist, and I think that caused a lot of animosity amongst the dominant population, that to see a Black family doing so well, and he was murdered. So to keep her family out of destitution, she started to make candies and created this burgeoning business called Nanette's Candies in Birmingham. And so much so that she received recognition from the White House to come for a visit to speak about kind of Black entrepreneurship and business owners. But she was very deep into civil rights and was a part of a number of like philanthropic groups. And so I think her relationship to Langston Hughes was trying to bring him into the city to speak and to host, a salon, to have him be amongst other like-minded individuals in the city, all in the common pursuit for civil rights and Black advancement. And so, I now am the steward of that letter. And the letterhead of Nanette's Candies, I've been making art with that as well. My mom still has the instrumentations of her candy shop, of the thermometer that you would use to heat up the candy and make sure it was the right temperature. But she was an entrepreneur out of necessity, but did really, really well, particularly at that time, to be able to support 3 children on her own.
Yes, you have a book. Your family, man, your family, the bomb. I mean, my goodness. I mean, Birmingham holds such a lot of history. I have to pause for a moment just to say this. I support museums, and it broke my heart to hear the news of the museum in Birmingham, right across the street from the 16th Street church. To where, it's temporarily closed at this standpoint. And so I definitely hope and pray that, that needed establishment to get back on its footing. It holds such an amazing amount of history. And so especially, and I connect that with your family, Nanette's Candy, huh? Wow, that's powerful. Entrepreneurship. And then I know that we were talking about your parents and how your mom is an art teacher. Is that correct? And so, and if you could talk a little bit how that influenced you as because when I met you, you're a curator. Yeah. And so you're doing this journey into using the curation type of skills, but you're producing this outstanding art. So can you talk a little bit about your mother's influence?
Oh, my mom she's a brilliant artist. She's been making art my whole life. I remember sitting for making me sit for portraits for hours on end so she could sketch me. And, being so annoyed at the time, how do you get a 5-year-old to sit still for so long? But now I have this charcoal drawing of myself at 5 that hangs on the stairwell of my home. She was a trained printmaker, but like me, she wanted to explore all different types of mediums. There wasn't just one material that she found kindred. She worked in metalwork. She was a glass bead. She loved making art out of glass. She's done clay, brilliant sketch artist, painter, you name it, she's tried it. And so she's an arts educator. And so I just grew up around the arts. Every basement we had as a child, I had growing up, was her art studio. And now my basement is my art studio. And so I just grew up in this creative environment where I wasn't in front of a television. My mom was teaching me how to make stained glass as a child. I learned to just really be creative and to turn on my imagination and know that it wasn't something I was going to grow out of. But I never called myself an artist because it was just what I knew. Right. I was just a creative person, always making art my whole life. And it was only probably in the last five or so years where I started to actually use that name, artist, to self-identify. But I've always had an appreciation for the fine arts. I wanted to study the history of it as well. So that kind of changed my journey and my trajectory into curatorial work, where I wanted to go further back in time. I studied South Asian art, so I was focused on the subcontinent and looking at the courtly arts of India. So thinking about like the 15th, 16th century, and using some of those same materials now in my work. Gouache is a type of watercolor that's opaque, so it's a little bit darker and not as translucent. And that's some of the same materials that many of the artists of the 16th century were using in their painting. So I carry all of these little facets of learning and exploration into my practice. But my mom showed me that art can be something that could be just for me, that I would just make for myself. But I'm just at a stage in my life where I want to share it.
Absolutely. I mean, because you're not only sharing your artistry, but you're also sharing history. Because we, looking at your process, and I'm going to go into this process because you do use history in a very unique way.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to talk a little bit about your process and how some of the artwork that you're doing and how you use the archive. So can you explain, a little bit about, this journey into Black archives and how you are utilizing that into your artwork?
I think a lot of this evolution of my career really took off when I started working at the Freedom Center, because I was focused on Black history and wanting to weave together stories that from the past that could help our present. And so I was learning so much alongside the audiences that I'm making these didactics for. And a lot of those histories were tumultuous and painful, and I had to find some sort of output for all of those feelings that of anger, of seeing humanity being kind of squashed and trampled, but still I rise, right? Like seeing that
it's that resilience.
Yes. So I needed an output for what I was feeling, and art really became that really like important conduit for me to put all of that into. And then that's when I started to, well, what if I can imagine something different for how their life ended up? What if that wasn't the ending? I know this picture exists of this person, this snapshot in time, but now if I create this new image that can sit alongside that image, I can counter what that impression was and offer a different way of seeing that person, of seeing their humanity that might not have existed in that lens, in that particular snapshot in time. So that kind of started to heal me
Wow.
in many ways, of saying, well, their story doesn't end there. That person who might have been lost in the archives, I remember those eyes. I remember that smile. I remember the impression that they left on me. And I want to carry that love that I've connected to through that image into a new plane of existence and imagining.
And so the images, how do you obtain the images, if you can share that, and so forth.
Shout out to my libraries scattered across this country. Our libraries are bastions of holding these archives, these important special collections that have been painstakingly digitized. I think that's what's really important, is these archives were not always accessible to the public. It's only in the last kind of decade that we've really seen this really concerted effort into digitizing them and making them accessible to the public. And that wealth of an archive I didn't see in my history studies, those pictures aren't making it into our books. So I was hungry for where I can find more of these images, these special collections that showed the full range of Black life.
Right.
And libraries, the Florida Institute that holds the Bundy
Carol Bundy, yes.
collection,
Yes.
those are the repositories where I draw from. It's people who had the foresight to preserve,
Yes.
but I don't want those archives to just stay buried in the repository of that institution where they're not engaged with.
You want to breathe life into them,
You want
right?
to breathe life into them and
Yes.
excavate them because they're meant for us all to see and to enjoy. And I think that's kind of the friction point of museums, right? Is 10% of a museum's collection is going to be on view at any given time. So what happens to all of that other important stuff that sits idly by? And so making art from it, it means it can sit in your living room. It can be on the wall of your kitchen. It can be in your bedroom. Like, that means you're carrying those archives from the dark into the light. And that's, I think, what I strive to do.
It's like history being reused to incite a reimagination of what is present and what can be.
Yeah, and still understanding what once was. So I think it's important to, when I exhume that image, I want you to have that context of who that person was within the context that they are originally presented, and then offer you a different alternative imagining of that unidentified sharecropper from Jerome, Arkansas. He was more than just this one snapshot. I want you to see us as a multitude and not a monolith. And so offering varying ways of seeing and my gaze.
Right. Now, is that the image you're referring to? We Are the Pearls?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to get into that. And so what I find fascinating about your artwork is that you deal with agriculture, you deal with Black mobility, migration, and things of that nature, which I think are very interesting and something that we can all learn from it. And so I definitely want to focus in on this wonderful We Are the Pearls. And this beautiful image of the sharecropper, and then you do something very dynamic. And I want you to walk us through not only this picture, but what's also included around the picture, and share your process of what that is that you're seeing. And when you talk about We Are the Pearls, you have oyster shells.
Yes.
Yes.
So again,
real oyster shells.
oyster shells, sourced from a local restaurant here in the city.
Wow.
Shout out to Sin for indulging my whims as a creative and saying, hey, sure, we'll hold them for you. This started in Cincinnati of thinking about river systems and basins, and understanding the flow of and movement of water and migration. Black migration is very much connected to the river and river histories. And the Ohio River connects to the mighty Mississippi, and the Mississippi Delta is pretty much the artery of this country. It's the life force of pretty much all of the rivers and their tributaries connect to the Mississippi. And there's a physicality to that and a presence about migration and movement of Black bodies along riverbanks. The settlement of where early Black settlement communities were next to riverbanks, areas that were deemed very volatile because the river would flood. Yes. So these were not areas that were deemed inhabitable, but if there's one thing about Black people is that we will make the uninhabitable livable.
We will take marshland, long as it's land, and whether it's the swamps, we make a way out of no way.
We
Absolutely.
will take, rivers and give you rice. We will find a way to cultivate and bring life in areas that you wouldn't see another living soul there. And so that was a tribute to understanding early Black settlement communities, and oysters are found deep in the sediment of river systems, but they're purifiers. They are they're necessary for an ecosystem to thrive because they bring in the harshest of sediments and they purify them. And through that purification and that agitation, they produce a pearl. And that's how I see is kindred to the Black experience, right, in this country, where we live through systemic oppression. We live through white supremacy and colonialism that tries to take and erase our culture and reduce us to a monolith. But we are culture makers. So even from the absence of trying to erase our language, our names, we make more culture. And that's what I see as the pearls of who we are. And so when I think about sharecroppers from Arkansas down to the Mississippi, every Black body, through our foodways, through our music, our song, our dance, just our humanity of our existence is, we are a river of pearls. And so that was testament to honoring that history and understanding.
Wow, that's beautiful. I mean, the artwork is beautiful. How you unpack that journey. I didn't know that about oysters being purifiers. Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't brought myself to be able to, the texture, I'm challenged with the texture. My daughters, they will go to a seafood restaurant, they'll order a whole bunch of oysters and whatnot. I'm challenged. One of these days, I probably will try, But this process, though, you talked about, it's a lot of oyster shells.
Yes,
in this one piece. So can you tell us approximately how many oyster shells? Because you went through the process of not only collecting them, but you're cleaning them.
I had to clean them.
And all that. Yes.
So they were all leftover from meals, right? So people had already eaten the oyster, and I just took the byproduct, and I try to reuse as much as possible in my work. It's part of my praxis. And so I probably had about 2 buckets worth of oysters that went through a very robust cleaning period of just sitting in some soap and bleach to just try to clean them a bit. And then I would just I'd have the figure outlined out on the, so I reuse frames that are, I just grab a frame from the thrift store that has dimensions that are wide enough.
And I got some frames for you.
Yes, plug. I'm always looking for frames. And I would outline the figure where I knew he was going to rest, and then just place the oysters around, and then resin. So I used resin, which is like epoxy, and I would put in some metallic kind of pigment to it, so it could kind of mimic the enamel of a pearl, so that you get this kind of shimmering glaze to coat the oysters, which also works to just affix them to the surface. But I wanted it to shimmer and have the iridescence of the pearl at the same time.
Right. When I look at this, and I know the history of sharecropping, and what you've done for me when I look at the piece is that you give not only humanity to those individuals that were sharecroppers, but you give them dignity and nobility to them.
Yeah.
Because even in the portrait you see him, he's looking up, and he has this, the way that it's done, it just illuminates dignity, illuminates respect. And so it's brilliant. Now, this is just one of many pieces, right, that will have oysters and things of them in the piece. And then you have a solo exhibition that's coming up soon that would incorporate some of this.
Yes, that one actually, We Are the Pearls will be on view in this exhibition as well. This exhibition is called Portals of Remembrance because it's a love letter to our ancestors, not just my ancestors, because I'm pulling archives from across the country. And I think part of the Black experience is that when we lost our name, we gained a family, right? Our family isn't just blood. And so when we see those archives, that is your ancestor. And so when I exhume these faces, for me, it's also for you. It's for everyone to see themselves in these histories, because it's all of our history. It's a shared legacy. And Portals of Remembrance is going to draw on both my personal archives of, what do I do with this Nanette's Candies letterhead that I have? I don't want it just to sit in my drawer in the dark. I want to breathe life into it. So I'm making art from it. Or, my grandfather, Klaus Gaba, was a photographer in Monrovia, Liberia. I think that's where I get my love of photography. I didn't know those seeds of connection till I was an adult, but I've always had this camera in my hand I've always been fascinated with photography.
Yes.
And I never got to meet my grandfather. See, that's the thing. He died before I was born. And so I see this love of looking through his photographs that my father has preserved. That I now steward. I have his stamp that said Providence Studios, which was his photography studio in Monrovia. I have what's left of those images. A lot of them were destroyed in the Civil War in Liberia, but he was documenting life in his city as well.
Right. Wow. I just thinking about when you talk about portals and you're just your lineage and your family travels. You talk about Liberia,
we scattered.
Birmingham, to Atlanta, to Southwest Ohio. I just think that's just amazing and just a beautiful form of expression. And so, for those that are able to see this solo exhibition, can you share details, where, dates, and so forth?
The exhibition will open. There's going to be an opening on August 28th. That's a Friday. It's a final Friday with the Art Academy of Cincinnati. So it's right here in downtown Cincinnati. The show should be up for about a month. So I think it will come down end of September. So hopefully there'll be ample time for people to find a date in their calendar that works, and it should be free to the public.
Okay. And how many how many pieces will be in this exhibition?
It's growing by the day, but I'd imagine over 50 pieces. Yeah. Mixed media, there'll be animation. I'm working with a lot of animation of the archives as well, because I think of them as alive. So you'll get a range of modes of storytelling in this one.
Wow, I'm so excited to see this. I can't wait. I just want to thank you for taking the time to sit down, share your personal story. I know family means so much to you, and it comes out from, our conversation. It comes out through your artwork too, and most importantly, your love for our history, our story, and I just want to applaud you and encourage you to continue. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
History has never asked us to look backward. It has always been asking us to look deeper, exploring a reality where the archive ceases to be a collection of forgotten photographs and becomes something altogether different. A doorway, a conversation, a living inheritance. Through the neo-historical artworks, memory is no longer confined to what was, It becomes a creative force that shapes what can be. The world we long for is assembled from fragments our ancestors left behind. Their courage becomes our foundation. Their questions become our compass. Their hope becomes the architecture of futures they could only glimpse. So perhaps the most radical thing we can do is research, share what we know, and remember with intention. Because one day someone will inherit the stories we leave behind. They will research our words and our acts of courage, wondering what we believe was possible. I am your scholar and gentleman in a hoodie. Know thy history.